Okay, let's go ahead and get started. So go ahead and bring up Android Studio. It took a lot of playing to get this to work. So I'm going to mention it briefly, so that if you're struggling, it doesn't work on your computer, then you know how to fix it, or at least how to fix this laptop and my computer at home. Now, when it first comes up here, should come up this if I close the project I created in all of your computers. There's a configure option down here, and there's the SDK manager. But first, I'm going to start a new Android Studio project. And call it project underscore add numbers. Then click next. You can leave all this as default. Then click next. For the activity, we're going to have an empty activity. So it's already selected, so you can either double click it or just click next. And you can leave the activity name as main activity if you want. And then click finish. It's not the fastest, kind of a slow program. I was able to get some performance speed out of it, but not to a great extent. At least not on the IDE. Okay, so tip of the day comes up. You can go ahead and click close on that. And it comes up here as code. Now, you guys don't have to worry about it in here. This is more for Liam, or if you're installing it at home. But if you do tools, this is the same SDK manager you would have saw over in the other screen. In addition, though, you see the AVD manager. We'll talk about that here in a minute. If I go on SDK manager, to get it to work right, after I installed Android Studio, I went in and I checked all of these items to begin with, and then installed it. You click OK. It's a lengthy process. Takes 15-20 minutes for it to install all that. Then I exited out. I said OK, exited out, went back in, and then I unchecked Android API 28 and I checked Android 8.1 Oreo. Version 27 seems to be more stable for some machines. Now, if 28 is working fine on your computer, then fantastic, but I had 27. So, and I unchecked this so it uninstall it. Now, sometimes it didn't uninstall it all the way, and it said partially installed. So then I had to reinstall it, add up all the API 28s back in, and then OK, exit out, go back in, uncheck it, for it to install it. And you see this is unchecked, and then over here in the SDK tools, Android SDK platform tools, it does say version 28 here, but you don't want to update it. So whatever backed off when you installed 28 is what you want to go with. That was a nightmare to figure out.
Mine's still it's downloading HTTPS.
That was it.
Services.gradle.org.
Now, the second part is to actually create an appropriate Android virtual device. That's AVD Manager. And the one that's by default will be API 28. So you want to delete it. And then you add a new virtual device. Create virtual device. And I won't actually create this, but I'll go through the process. Come up here. I chose Nexus 6. No particular reason. Just it was larger size, 5.96. I figured it'd be easier to see in class. And then I came over here, and you have to then download the Oreo. Um, it's a software that goes along with the emulator. Once it gets done downloading, and again, don't do the 28 level. Then after you choose Oreo, you click Next. And from here, that's interesting. I chose this as hardware. This isn't my one I created. And but they do indicate that if you have trouble with on your hardware, it says use a computer's graphics card for faster rendering. If you do have problems with that, then use the software as a workaround. So I'd recommend choosing hardware first and seeing how it works. Okay, so that's basically it. Didn't sound hard, but took a while to figure that out. Okay, so this is where we're at. We're sitting here at the Java. There's two tabs up here. There's Activity Main. Assuming I could click it. Oh, it's just slow. There it goes. When you click Activity Main, it brings up the design of your app. Okay, any of those should work, or you can use that one. Yeah. I actually got it installed on all the laptops, all the software.
I need to get Kleenex.
Yeah. Now, I don't know if I actually checked the last two computers. I was getting pretty tired last night. So on most of them, I went through and created an app on every computer. I wanted to make sure it was working. So I came into class and would be smooth sailing. Okay, when this comes up, you can go back and forth again between these. The Java main activity, that's where your code goes. And activity main is your design. Now, if I expand these two, you see this Gradle scripts. Probably won't do much with that at first, if ever. Then you see manifest. We'll talk more about that as time goes on. Here's Java. Here's RES. Specifically, there's layout. Here's where activity main.xml is. And that kind of makes sense. When you want to design a layout, you look for the thing called layout. So if you close the activity main.xml by accident, then you can just expand this and you can find it. Okay. Now the main activity.java, where's it at? Let's see. I guess that'd be this one right here. So again, if you close it by accident, you can come over here and double click it. Just like any other Windows machine, you can resize these to give yourself more space. Now, some of you may have two windows on here. Now, if I do the drop down here, I got mine set for design, and that's what I'd recommend. That's what we'll mainly be using here at first. Did you have two on yours to begin with? No, just one?
Okay, now it opens.
Not open? Yeah, it's a beast of a program. It really is.
Yeah. It was just the issue of downloading the stuff that it needed. Like I said,
Now, it does go faster the next time. Yeah, each time it hits a little piece and it needs more software, it'll take a while and so forth. So if you want to go ahead and go into your AVD manager, if you do tools, AVD manager, you can go ahead and get that created, and that'll be off there processing, getting it ready. Tools.
That's not my tool.
Then there's a link down here at the bottom for more software to install.
It says install build tools 20. Oh yeah, we had this issue when we first started. So I have to install all that stuff, don't we?
Right, you have to install that. Okay, so I'm gonna click this Hello World. So by default, it comes up as Hello World, And then I'll press my delete. So I want to delete that. Now we want to build a project to add two numbers together. Nothing too exciting. Kind of what we did over in the Apple side, the iOS. So over here on the left side, you got your palette. If I go to text, a bunch of different text. These are already designed such that when you run your app on your phone, it'll pop up with appropriate items. For example, if it's a number, you don't want it to pop up with the letters. You want them to input numbers. So it's already pre-designed for you. So if you click the number here and you drag it over, you'll see a little green rectangle appear.
What's this under?
Android Studio.
Radio scripts and then what? I was downloading all this stuff.
Is it?
Yeah.
Yeah, I started about 10 o'clock yesterday morning, and I finished about 10 o'clock last night. So
Downloading all stuff.
the what?
With downloading all stuff.
Right. And most of it was Android Studio, getting it set up. It's just lengthy.
Yeah. I think it's all the new software that's Android's been releasing recently, as far as apps go.
It has everything except for that API 28.
Oh, okay.
I put everything out there just in case we see how far we get. Okay, so now I'm going to drop another number on there. So I'll click and drag, and you see a little green bar. And you want to make it fairly close to the other one for now. We're going to work a lot more with constraints later on. Now I'll let up. Then I'll go to my buttons. I'm going to drag my button over. And you'll see a little green bar. Now it gets confusing because it also has a picture of the button. That's to the bottom right of it. But the green box is what you're trying to focus on. And so you're going to put that fairly close to the other ones too. And then we're going to drop on another text, another number. And put it about that close. It does weird things if you don't have them too close. I mean, if they're kind of far apart. Its inference is off. Everybody good so far?
Yeah.
Okay. Now, if I put my mouse over this little red circle with exclamation, it says the view is not constrained. It only has design time position, so it will jump to 0, 0 at runtime unless you add the constraints. Which means it'll put every control you just put on there, it'll put them all in the upper left-hand corner on top of each other. We're going to explore that a lot bit more. But up here at the top, you see below the Nexus 4, which I should have had you change, but below the Nexus 4, there's like a wand with five little blue dots around it. That's a magic wand. If you click that and infer constraints, what that means is this placement on a screen is relative to something else. Like if you look at my second number I put on here, it's got a little arrow going up the first one. The first one has a little arrow going to the top. The button has an arrow going to the bottom of the second one. And then the last one has an arrow going to the button.
Nexus 6. Oreo.
Oreo. Yeah, so you want to download software for that.
8.0 or 8.1?
The 27. API 27.
Okay.
Everybody get their constraints?
Okay. Yeah, infer constraints.
Infer constraints. Okay. Now, if we were to look at the code behind that, if I come down here at the bottom, you see there's a design and text. If you click the text, and you don't have to worry about this too much at this point. Here's my first edit text, and it's referring to the parent. Here's my second edit text, and it's referring to the first edit text. So its placement is in regards to the previous text box. If you look at the button is put in reference to the text above it. And then if you look at this last one, its reference is put to the button. So that's how it controls where it's going to appear on your screen. Now I can click design to go back to design. We're going to see later on how to change these. It's not hard to change the constraints, but for now, just put them fairly close to each other, and it'll automatically, the magic wand will set it up. Now, when I was playing with this over the weekend, I was having some of them too far away, and I got confused on the constraints. What you can do is you see the little line with two dots and a red X next to it. That gets rid of your constraints. That clears all your constraints. And then you can move your component a little bit closer and then choose the magic wand again. Okay. Now I'm going to click the first text box, edit text. Thinking Visual Studio. So I got this selected. Now over here on the right side, you should see your attributes. And up at the top is ID. This is what you want to call it. And it's called edit text. We want to give this a name a little bit more meaningful. ed underscore num1. Now, it may or may not come up with update usages as well. If it does, you just always say yes. What that's referring to is if you got a constraint, it'll update you over in your constraints, what it's relative to and so forth. Now, if I click my second one, you see the ID up here is edit text 2. So I'm going to type edit underscore num2. It's useful in programming if you start off with some kind of identifier so you know what type it is, that it's an edit text. That way, coding-wise, you know EDs are always edit text. And again, if it pops up that, you can click yes. And now I'll click my last one. And I'm going to call this edit sum. Because we're going to add those numbers together. Now, if we click our button, down over here in the text view, you see it says button. Well, maybe we want that to say add numbers. So you can change the text to whatever you want. Everybody good so far? So now we're done with our design, basically. We're going to go put the code in. So I'm going to come over here to main activity.java. And I want to come down here at the bottom before this last closing brace. And this is where we put our code. Remember how in iOS we simply dragged and dropped and it created that for us? We have to create it completely from scratch ourselves. So it doesn't do the same thing. Now we're going to type public void. And it's a button. So let me do a button underscore add numbers. And then I'm going to do a view v closing parentheses. You got public, that just means it can be called from anywhere. It's public. Void means nothing's returned versus return an integer or something. We haven't talked about functions and procedures too much, but we'll see you can create some where you can return something.
You said graphics, build hardware first.
I would see if it works. If it doesn't work, choose software. There was an option where you can like let it choose, which probably would be fine, but I just wanted to specifically say hardware if the hardware is going to work.
Okay, and then created the virtual device.
So go ahead and click the little triangle to start it. Now notice that this is in red, isn't it? And it says cannot resolve symbol view. If you do an Alt Enter, so you hold down your Alt and press Enter. Yeah, let's try it again. Click at the end and then do Alt Enter. I guess you have to do it when it prompts you. The red will go away. Now do an Enter and do a beginning curly brace and then press Enter. Now when you did a beginning curly brace, it should have put a closing curly brace. And now we're ready to put our code in here. Now if you're wondering, well, what did that Alt Enter do? If I come up here under the imports, it only brings in the code it needs. Because again, the idea is to keep your app as small as possible. And so to use a view, we had to import the code for it. We're going to see that again. So now down here, we're going to type edit text and call this maybe N1 is equal to edit text, find view by ID, r.id.ed. Then M1. You'll notice again, it pops up with that little prompt saying do an Alt Enter. So we're doing Alt Enter, and that adds the library code for edit text. So they've got code written to handle all that, and that imports it up here now. Code completion is so important on this. Because to be honest, I have trouble getting the right, I can't remember all the, the uppercase, lowercase, and so forth. So if I start typing edit text again, because we're going to bring in another one. Once I type in that so it knows what I'm trying to do, I just do a tab, and that finishes out for me. Into equals, begin parentheses, I start typing edit text. Once it pops up with what I want, and I press tab. Find view by ID. I can no more remember that the V has to be capitalized, the B has to be capitalized, and the I has to be capitalized and fly to the moon. So as I start typing find, then it'll pop that up, and I just do a tab, and it does complete. If you do r.id. And I said if you develop some kind of standard for how to start your edit texts like ed, if you just start typing ed, it'll pop up with everything with an ed in front of it, along with pat. And you can use your arrow keys. Like I want num2, so I down arrow to num2 and do a tab, close parentheses, and then semicolon. And we got one more. Edit text, I'll call it N3, is equal to edit text, find view by ID, r.id.ed, and then I'll do a down arrow to sum, closing parentheses and semicolon.
Okay, I got it. This kind of loads.
This what?
It loads.
Oh, it does? Let's see. uppercase E. So yeah, change it to uppercase E. Make sure that's there. Case sensitivity will drive you nuts on these. That's why if you don't have a good memory like me, what you put, then the code completion is just invaluable.
Do I exit out of the simulator now?
No, leave it up. You can leave it up running the entire time. I think there's only one machine I had to do a cold boot on the simulator because it wouldn't install the app. It actually's got a cell phone running there, and so it installs it just like it would in a real setting. And for some reason, it wouldn't shut down, so I had to do a cold boot. Okay. So everybody got their three items brought in. Now let's talk about what this does. This tells what type of component we're working with, the edit text, the N1, N2, and N3 are whatever names you want to give it. So that's your choice. The edit text here, that's just telling we're converting it. And find view by ID. This is looking for the component called ednum1. Find view by ID. This is looking for the component ednum2. And find view by ID, looking for that component edsum. Remember iOS where we take the component, we drag it and drop it up here, and it would define it? That's what we're doing. We're defining it. So now we want to get some information from it. I'm going to come up here, and I'm going to declare some doubles. Double D1, D2, and actually, I'm lying to you. Num1, Num2, and the sum. You can call it whatever you want, but that tells me my first one's number 1, and second one's number 1, or number 2, and then I'm going to be finding the sum. So I'll be adding them together. Now num1 is going to equal to double dot parse double. And then we're going to have n1 dot get text dot toString. Do you need that code a little bit bigger?
Yeah.
Okay. See if I remember how to do it. Let's see. Preferences, options. Let's see. File settings. Editor. Font. 50. Is that really 50? 60? 70? Is that bigger?
Yeah.
Okay. Now what this is doing is we set up the relationship between N1 and that blank on our app. The get text is kind of what you're thinking, is retrieving the text, but you actually have to convert it to a string so you can use it. And then we the double dot parse double, that's converting it to a double. I think over in the previous package I'd been using, you just had to do a double dot parse or something like that. I forget what the exact syntax was, but it's just a little bit different. Same idea. Want to convert it to a number with decimals. Remember, a double is a number with decimals. Num2 is going to be double dot parse double in2 dot get text dot toString. Then at that point, we're going to say the sum is equal num1 plus num2. We've seen that some that code we covered to begin with. That's the assignment operator. It's going retrieving value in num1, retrieving value in num2. It's adding them together and then place that into our variable called the sum. Now we want to write that back out to the app. So to our screen. In3 was where we're going to put the sum at. Remember, that was our ed underscore sum. That's why it's nice to use meaningful variable names so you know where in the world you want to put it. So we're going to say in3 dot, by the way, if get text gets text, what do you think might change it? Set text. And here we're going to do a double dot toString, and then we'll say the sum. Now, a lot of it's kind of common sense. Get text, set text. I had forgot this morning, so I was Googling the switch in case we get that far today. And I couldn't remember how to check to see if it's on. Well, when I saw it, it was just like I felt like hitting my head. It was so simple. It's dot is on. Pretty straightforward. I think that was what Android was. Typo in Word the sum. I don't got no typo. I wanted it to be called that. Guess it didn't like my name very well. It's my phone. I forgot to mute it. Turn it down.
Did you ever see? Whoa. Yeah, that was funny.
Okay, now it's silenced.
No one can ever remember my
So now we're ready to run it. You see a little green triangle up here? That's our runner app. It'll come up and say initializing ADB. And comes up, you should only have one, the next is 6. Then you click OK on it. You can choose it to set that as your default from here on if you want. Now you probably have the old app on there with some numbers. That was because I went and created an app on everybody's computer to make sure it's working. It says if it says guest isn't online after 7 seconds, retrying, it's thinking. If you look down at the bottom of the screen, you'll see that Android saying that's doing a build and executing tasks and so forth. It'll eventually get there. Now, once your emulator is up, you want to leave it up. So it doesn't hurt anything, but it just speeds up things instead of bringing it up each time. So here if I click inside of here, you see it only brings up the numbers. It doesn't bring up the letters. So I can type 5, and then I can click in this next blank, and you can think of it as your finger clicking in it. It brings this up, and I can put 3 in there. And then you click Add Numbers. That's like your finger pushing it.
Yeah, if you click the green thing, it takes you to the bottom. So yeah.
So you can just type whatever it is.
It's just to test how smart you are.
So what did I do wrong? Let me
8
see.
plus 9, 5, 5, 5, 5, 5.
Okay, so I bring in those 3. I converted num1 and num2
Oh, you can join the phone.
to doubles. I added them together. That's curious. Maybe this really doesn't like the sum. Let me change that to an underscore. Might not have been initialized. Oh, because I didn't change it here. Let's try that. Now you can click the little red square here to stop the app. And then you can click this Run App again. And click OK. And let's try it again. That is not working.
No, let's see.
Yes.
Oh, I know what I did wrong. I forgot the main thing. Put the button, yeah. If you click, if you go to Activity Main here, and you click the Add Numbers button, then down here there's an on click.
Oh my god.
You got to assign the code you just created to the button. So again, you go back to your design, you click your button, and then it's on click. You do the drop down. You should only have one there, and choose the one you created. And now run it.
Okay, what is the button we click?
Okay, so you go to
The
button, and
click
then
button.
and then it says on click right above text view.
Okay.
Okay, so I'm gonna stop that app, and then I'll run it again. Try 3. It's got to work. Try 3, right?
What?
Okay, hold on. So what?
Okay, so now you can also type in the numbers for speed's sake. Click Add Numbers and 11.0. We haven't done any formatting yet, but we'll see that eventually.
Okay, well, I was gonna say it's not calculating.
And this is actually, once we generate that APK, you could put this on your own website, and then in your Android, if you go to it, it'll actually install it. So it's pretty cool, really. I did that on my own website. You can't do that with iOS apps, I don't believe. I think you have to go through their store or have it type connected directly. Everybody get their numbers working? Yeah? Okay. Now again, you can leave this up if you want. If you're having troubles, then you could power it off. Here's a power. And you see all the different options here, though some of these are down here at the bottom. Now if I go back to the design here, and I'll click Stop App, so I'll click the red square. I was designing this for Nexus 4, even though my emulator was in Nexus 6. So if you do the drop down here and you actually choose the Nexus 6, then this is, oh, did I change it? Oh yeah. Then that'll look more like what you're designing for. questions on that?
Emulator's not working anymore.
Your emulator's not working?
Yeah, this thing is like broken.
I'll come take a look at it here in a second.
Assistant.
Let's see.
Professor
Uh-huh.
Laser chip.
Yes. Now we're going back to physics.
Bring me back the paper towel.
Let's see. Physics formulas. I keep forgetting which one I always go to.
Are we doing file new project?
Yes, you're going to create 2 using different formulas.
You do need to get that, like a poster with just equations that we can do.
I don't think we figured weight, have we? Mass
no.
times? No.
Mass times what?
Gravity, I think, is what that is.
Yeah.
So weight could be a good one.
Yeah. Let's do weight.
Gravitational PE.
What? I don't.
Potential energy.
Can we not? Can we not do that? That was a little bit.
It's actually not hard.
What's power?
What?
What's power?
Power. Oh, you can see it.
It's at the bottom left.
Oh.
It's not in frame, so yeah.
We'll use that. It won't be hard. Shouldn't take more than 10 hours. So weight. We got W is equal to mg. W is weight. And m is mass. Assuming. And g is gravity. Now for the other one, I'm going to say, instead of that weird looking symbol, I'm going to say U. This is gravitational PE. So I'm going to say U is equal to mgh. And
Mg times H.
I'm assuming m is mass.
G is probably still gravitational, and H would be height.
Is that what it was? Let's say it's height. Doesn't really matter
Yeah.
for what we're doing.
Speed program work.
Right. And this is going to be your PE. No, you said your emulators.
Well, I got it working.
That work?
But I don't have the app on it. So I'd say that.
You publish it again. So if you put the little green, it'll republish it. Go back to code. Main activity.java. You're missing a parentheses at the end. Well, I know you got 2. Never mind. Do the option again. And choose the
This is the one I just had. Yeah.
was that what was on there or
That's the one that I should do that.
oh okay. And choose the other one. Let's see.
2. Would product be multiple locations? Yes. EDs underscore product. I don't either. It's a bullshit.
You got space here. You got space. And so that was for the head underscore sum. Did they get host?
What's the other?
Number 2. Sum.
Sounds really normal. Need to blow my nose.
What's that mouse? I can't do this. Continue this. So, I'm going to shut off the constraints. So I'm going to clear. Let's see what we have. That's our sum. And this is in num1. This is num2. This is add numbers. So move those fairly close to each other. So I don't have to worry about manually setting it. Now let's get the magic wand. And I think that's going up there. Okay. So now, we got our add numbers. It's running button underscore add number. That's right. Our Java still has an error. It's got a there. I got rid of the underscore there. And I got rid of that error. Let's try to run that. This is good with me. In theory, an IDE, if it doesn't allow a space, it should tell you. Just generally in programming, it's a good idea not to put spaces. But that was what was wrong. When you put a space there, it put the underscore over in that one file, but it didn't put it everywhere. So that's a bug with the software. Oh, and the two projects are over there. And I don't know what it is exactly, but while I was waiting for installing, I was trying to figure out the send to compressed folders error that we're getting. And 2 machines I tried it on worked. I could create as compressed folders. So it could be that we were trying to do it while the project was still open. So before you do the compressed folders, make sure you exit out of Android Studio completely. And then hopefully it'll create them. If we had it open, then that's potentially one of the issues.
double spin. There was